On the morning of June 22nd, the heart of Damascus was shaken by one of the deadliest attacks in recent years. A suicide bomber entered an Orthodox church during the early hours of prayer, an hour when most faithful had gathered in quiet devotion. The explosion that followed claimed 25 innocent lives. Dozens more were severely injured. This was not just a building under attack. This was a sanctuary, a sacred space, violated. The city fell into mourning. Families gathered to identify the dead. Some left behind children. Some had just come to light candles for the sick. Others were clergy who had served for decades. The funeral, held the next day, was attended by thousands. They wept. They prayed. They demanded answers, but also they hoped for peace. From the Vatican, a message arrived swiftly. Pope Leo XIV, informed within hours of the bombing, immediately called for a moment of prayer inside his private chapel. He later sent an official telegram through Cardinal Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State. The Pope's words were brief, but they carried the full weight of the Church's sorrow. With profound sadness, I learned of the tragic events that unfolded in Damascus. I express my spiritual closeness and heartfelt condolences to the victims' families. May God grant eternal rest to those lost, and comfort to those who mourn. He described the act as a heinous violation of sacred space, and reaffirmed the Vatican's support for all Syrian Christians enduring persecution. In a rare gesture, the Pope personally lit 25 candles in the chapel. Each one symbolized a life taken. No names were read aloud. But each flame, he said, reaches heaven in silence. The Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Antioch released a strongly worded statement. Shortly after the attack, "We condemn this horrific crime. We urge the responsible authorities to uphold justice and defend the sanctity of our churches. Violence against worshippers is a violation not only of faith but of basic human dignity." Cardinal Boutros, the Maronite Patriarch, also addressed the media. "No act of terror can extinguish the light of faith. Let us not meet hate with hate, but let us demand justice, loudly and clearly." Across the world, the message was unified. From the United States, a statement from the State Department called the attack a despicable act of terrorism against innocent people gathered in peace. The European Union echoed this sentiment, affirming its support for religious freedom and the safety of worshippers worldwide. Governments of Spain, Italy, France, and Turkey also expressed solidarity with Syria's Christian community. Their voices, though secular, joined the chorus of mourning and condemnation. While the investigation is still ongoing, early reports from the Syrian Interior Ministry point to the involvement of ISIS-linked cells. Authorities confirmed the attacker perished in the blast. However, within hours, they announced that the mastermind, along with several members of a local terror cell, had been arrested. A government spokesperson said, "This was an act designed to spread fear, not just to Syrian Christians, but to all who believe in coexistence. We will respond with strength, justice, and unity." In the streets of Damascus, grief hung heavy. Church bells tolled throughout the day. Imams visited churches in solidarity. Even those of no religious affiliation lit candles and wept. One mourner, a man who lost both his parents in the blast, told a journalist, "They were just lighting candles. That's all they were doing. And now I have no one." A local priest, Father Elias, held a vigil outside the damaged church. He addressed the crowd with shaking hands. "Terror tried to silence prayer. But our prayers are louder. Louder than bombs. Louder than fear." This attack was not just an assault on a building or a faith group. It was a challenge to humanity's shared belief in sacredness, in dignity, in peaceful coexistence. When Pope Leo sent his condolences, he wasn't only speaking to Catholics. He was speaking to anyone who believes in the right to worship in peace. May the tears of Damascus become the seeds of peace, the Pope said in his final line. And while peace may feel far away, each act of prayer, each candle lit, and each voice lifted in grief, moves us one step closer. In moments like this, when the world witnesses yet another act of senseless violence, we must pause. We must mourn. But more importantly, we must remember. As Pope Leo said, do not become numb to tragedy. Each life lost is a soul that mattered. Each church attacked is a reminder that our faith must remain standing when the walls do not. This is not just the story of an attack. This is the beginning of a global call for reflection. The world grieved. Damascus mourned. And in the Vatican, action began. Pope Leo XIV, more than a spiritual leader, sees himself as a guardian of human dignity. His condolences were not just ceremonial. They were a signal of intent. The Pope immediately convened a private emergency meeting with top members of the Roman Curia, including Cardinal Parolin, Secretary of State; Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, Prefect for Evangelization; Cardinal Konrad Krajewski, Papal Almoner. Together, they crafted a multi-pronged response to the tragedy. Within 48 hours of the bombing, Pope Leo ordered the Office of Papal Charities to release €250,000 in emergency aid. This package included medical kits for burn victims, funeral and burial support for affected families, psychological care and trauma response for survivors, support for the damaged church's rebuilding efforts. The Vatican confirmed this initiative was not symbolic. It was targeted aid, in partnership with Caritas Syria and local diocesan networks. Let the world know that we are not only praying, the Pope said. We are helping. Pope Leo declared July 1st a global day of intercession for all persecuted Christians, especially those in Syria. He called on churches worldwide to ring their bells at 12 noon local time, followed by 1 minute of silence and a rosary for peace. The Vatican's social media team launched the global hashtag #PrayForDamascus. Within hours, it was trending across Catholic and secular platforms alike. In his words, let our collective prayer rise like incense, not only for the victims, but for the conversion of the perpetrators. Behind closed doors, the Vatican's Secretariat of State began a quiet but firm diplomatic outreach. Letters were sent to the Syrian government, neighboring Middle Eastern states, UN leaders, heads of Muslim-majority countries with historical Christian ties. The message was one of peaceful urgency. Religious freedom must be protected, not merely in principle, but in practice. We cannot stand idle as houses of worship become battlegrounds. Multiple countries responded positively, promising cooperation in security and humanitarian support. Pope Leo also reached out to the Patriarch of Antioch, Coptic Pope Tawadros II, and the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew. Together, they issued a joint statement. An attack on one church is an attack on all of us. We stand united across all traditions, Orthodox, Catholic, Evangelical, against this tide of hate. This marked the first joint declaration on religious persecution between these three leaders since the Syrian war began over a decade ago. In a surprise video released on the Vatican's YouTube and TikTok channels, Pope Leo spoke directly to young people around the globe. If you are 15, 18, 20, and wondering if faith is still real in a world like this, listen to me. You were born for this time. You are the generation that must rebuild what hate tries to destroy. The video has since amassed over 12 million views, with youth groups from the Philippines to Nigeria organizing virtual prayer events. On the evening of June 27, Pope Leo made an unannounced visit to a Syrian refugee family in Rome, one of whom had lost a brother in the church bombing. He stayed for over an hour. No media were invited. Only a few photos were later shared, one showing the Pope holding a young child, whispering a prayer over her forehead. When asked later why he visited them, the Pope said, "Because grief cannot be sent through letters. It must be held with hands." Pope Leo did not politicize the event. But he also did not avoid addressing the elephant in the room. In a public homily during the feast of St. Peter and Paul, he said, "To my Muslim brothers and sisters, we know this act does not reflect your faith. But your voices, your condemnations, matter now more than ever. Together, let us rise against the distortion of religion for violence." Shortly after, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, a major Islamic leader, released his own condemnation of the attack and affirmed the sanctity of all religious spaces. We spoke with Father Youssef, a local priest near Damascus. When we heard that Pope Leo had spoken our names, we cried, "We are not forgotten. That matters more than you can imagine." A teenage girl named Samira, who lost her aunt in the bombing, wrote, "I used to feel invisible. But now the whole church is praying for us. That makes me want to be strong." This was not the Vatican sending money. This was the Vatican sending hope. It was a message to the wounded. We are with you in the rubble. We are with you in the rebuilding. And we are with you in the prayer that this never happens again. As Pope Leo reminded the Church, true Christianity is not only spoken, it is lived. And now is the time to live it, in service, in prayer, in unity. Tragedy alone does not change the world. But tragedy, met with courage, can spark something stronger than sorrow. The bombing in Damascus that left 25 innocent people dead has sent ripples far beyond Syria's borders. But Pope Leo XIV wants those ripples to become waves. Waves of policy, of protection, of permanent change. In the days following the bombing, the Holy See officially submitted a draft proposal to the United Nations Human Rights Council. It is being called the Leo Accord, a global initiative for the protection of places of worship. Its key provisions include mandatory global surveillance protection grants for high-risk religious sites, international criminal penalties for attacks on worshippers, annual interfaith security assessments facilitated by neutral peacekeeping observers, local education campaigns against religious hate speech. In his own words, Pope Leo declared, "Let this generation be the one that says, 'No church, no mosque, no synagogue shall ever be attacked again.'" In silence, the proposal is gaining momentum. Several countries, France, Lebanon, Canada, Brazil, the Philippines, have expressed public support. If passed, the Leo Accord would become the first global treaty focused solely on protecting religious gatherings in the modern era. Behind the scenes, Vatican officials have confirmed that Pope Leo is considering a pilgrimage to the Middle East in the coming year. The plan, still under discussion, includes potential visits to Damascus, security permitting, Baghdad, Jerusalem, Amman, Cairo. The objective? To walk where the wounded walk. To sit where Christians have bled. And to remind the world that faith never flees, it endures. The pilgrimage, if approved, would mark the boldest gesture of papal solidarity with persecuted Christians since Pope Francis visited Iraq in 2021. In Damascus, signs of resilience are already appearing. Local volunteers have reopened a small worship space in a nearby building. They call it the Upper Room, modeled after the place where the early Christians gathered after Christ's death. One survivor, Miriam, who lost her husband and brother, said, "I thought I would never pray again. But today, my little boy asked if he could light a candle for his father. That gave me strength." A young priest, Father Elias, is continuing Mass in the open air. He told reporters, "We've had no roof since the bombing. But heaven is still above us." What happened in Damascus is part of a larger pattern. According to Open Doors International, over 360 million Christians now face high levels of persecution in the world. Churches in Nigeria, Pakistan, China, and parts of India are under surveillance, threat, or closure. Pope Leo has stated this crisis is not political, it is humanitarian. A world that protects freedom of expression, but not freedom of worship, is a world out of balance. He is urging Catholics and non-Catholics alike to advocate for stronger asylum protections for religious refugees, funding for interfaith peace-building programs, diplomatic consequences for states that enable religious violence. In places thousands of miles away, the faithful have not remained silent. A youth ministry in Colombia held a 25-hour prayer marathon. A parish in South Korea raised over $20,000 for affected families in Syria. Catholic schools in Kenya created peace murals with messages of solidarity for Syrian children. These small acts, individually quiet, together form a chorus of resistance to hatred. On the seventh day after the bombing, Pope Leo delivered a final address. To the people of Syria, we carry your pain in our prayers, your names in our hearts, and your courage in our example. To the Church, now is not the time for comfort. It is the time for courage. And to the world, if we ignore the cries from Damascus today, we will wake tomorrow. To louder ones, let us listen. Let us act. Let us love. His voice broke slightly as he closed. To the 25 souls, I will carry your memory until my final breath. And when I stand before God, I will say your names. History has many crossroads. Moments when the world must choose whether to change or to return to silence. This could be one of those moments. The bombing in Damascus may not have changed global policy overnight, but it reignited the moral compass of the global church. It brought faith leaders together, and it reminded millions that love is louder than hate. We tell stories like this not to dwell in darkness, but to remember the light that survives it. The candles Pope Leo lit are no longer burning, but their flame lives on in the hearts of every person who still believes that sacred places should be safe, that prayer should never be punished, and that faith is stronger than fear. This is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a louder prayer. A prayer for justice. A prayer for healing. A prayer for peace. Tell us where you're watching from. Please comment below with a prayer for Syria, or simply type Amen to let the families know they are not alone.